Hi, I'm Petu, and this is my new and improved Shen guide. I can safely say that I have the expertise necessary to write a guide for Shen, because I've mained him for 4 years already. In those 4 years, I have gathered over 1.6 million mastery points on him. After playing one champion for that long, I have naturally gotten pretty good at him. In Season 7, I reached Challenger for the first time and peaked at over 1100 LP, which was ranked 3 on Europe Nordic East at the time. After that, I had enough of Nordic East and decided to try my luck on Europe West, the most competitive server in the West. This season, I peaked at 1200 LP on Europe West, beating my old record by 100 LP. The purpose of this guide is to give you, the viewer, the best chances of winning games on Shen. I will go over my 2 favorite rune pages, teach you what items to build on Shen, and explain the most important parts of his gameplay. At the end of the video, I will present the long-awaited, updated Shen skin tier list. In this video, I will not explain every single bullet point in detail, but if you need in-depth explanations of certain concepts introduced in this video, you should definitely check out my Ultimate Shen guide afterwards. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Without further ado, let's get started with the guide. This year, Shen has seen a major change in his playstyle. This is caused by the changes to teleport. The cooldown of teleport was significantly increased in the early game, where Shen needed it most. Unlike other top laners, Shen does not need teleport to join his team, because of his ultimate, Stand United. This eventually led to the switch to Ignite as our preferred summoner spell in addition to Flash. I basically take Ignite in every single game now, even in Challenger. Ignite has a low cooldown and allows Shen to have kill pressure in matchups that were previously unfavorable for him. With that being said, let us discuss Shen's rune pages. After testing almost every single possible rune page on Shen this season, I have come to the conclusion that you need 2 rune pages to play Shen to his full potential. The first one is the classic Grasp of the Undying page. This page is designed to maximize the value of each rune slot specifically for Shen. We amplify Shen's natural trading pattern with these runes. Grasp is easy to stack up and proc, and it works well with Shen's health scaling. The activation of Shield Bash is trivial because of your passive shield. Second Wind is constantly active due to the high frequency of your trades. Revitalize increases the shields from Key Barrier and Stand United, in addition to increasing the healing from Grasp. Cheap Shot applies to targets slowed by your Q or taunted by your E. And lastly, Ultimate Hunter decreases the massive base cooldown of Stand United. This rune page, combined with Ignite, makes Shen's laning incredibly oppressive against melee top laners. But if you're stuck in a ranged matchup, with no way of reliably proccing the offensive runes, the Grasp page becomes suboptimal. This is where my innovative side comes in. Through careful theory crafting and extensive testing, I invented and perfected Fleet Footwork Shen. This rune page completely transforms Shen's previously difficult matchups. Ever since his rework, Shen has struggled with one specific factor, the lack of innate sustain in his kit. Fleet Footwork is the answer to that problem. The Keystone usually heals you for over 3000 health every game, and it can reach even higher than that. Why it works so well is the melee exemption of healing penalties from minions. But not only does Fleet Footwork offer the paramount healing, it also gives you 20% movement speed on those energized basic attacks. The impact of this short movement speed surge cannot be understated. When you're last hitting minions in a traditionally difficult Shen matchup, like Gameplan for example, you would normally almost always take a Q to the face when last hitting a minion. But Fleet allows you to quickly snag a minion kill and retreat with the movement speed buff. Over the course of an entire laning phase, avoiding abilities or basic attacks due to Fleet will amount to hundreds of health points saved. This can mean the difference between having to go back or being able to ult bot lane and get a double kill. If we take a closer look at the rest of the rune choices in my Fleet page, we simply pick the most consistent runes for each slot for Shen. Triumph can be a lifesaver in teamfights. Legend Alacrity gives a nice boost in attack speed. Coup de Grace allows you to secure kills. The secondary resolve tree grants us access to Second Wind and Revitalize, which further increases the healing from Fleet Footwork and Triumph. To conclude the rune chapter, my advice is as follows. Take the Grass page in almost all melee matchups, and opt for the Fleet page when against ranged top laners or lane bullies like Gangplank. Next up, we have Shen's item builds. You should always start with Doran's shield and a health potion. The sustain from Doran's shield is unparalleled in the early game, and it allows you to play aggressively starting from level 1. Shen's first completed item should almost always be Titanic Hydra. It's simply the perfect item for Shen. It provides the best wave clear, most burst damage, and even makes you decently tanky with the plus 450 health. There are still some outlier games where I build Sunfire Cape first, for example if the enemy team comp is full AD, but in general I would always recommend going Titanic Hydra first. After Titanic, you should purchase tier 2 boots, either Ninja Tabai or Mercury's Treads, depending on the enemy team composition. And that's your core build completed right there, Titanic and boots! You have 4 item slots left to adapt to the specific game you are in. I'll now categorize the best items for Shen. The items are listed in order of preference. To combat physical damage on the enemy team, the best item by far is Randuin's Omen. Randuin's is an extremely versatile item and a gold efficient purchase, even if the enemy team does not have heavy crit. Thornmail is mainly used as a counter to lifesteal and is fine to sit on Bramble West for a while. Sunfire Cape is still a good armor item on Shen, but it is mainly outshined by Randuin's Omen. For magic resistance, my number one option is Adaptive Helm. Adaptive Helm is extremely strong against champions with high frequency spell damage, like Cassiopeia, for example. But if the passive does not function against your opponents, I would consider going Spirit Visage instead. Spirit Visage is more gold efficient than Adaptive, and if you're running Fleet Footwork, it should have even higher priority due to the healing increase. Shen has a couple of offensive options if you're really far ahead and want to carry. The best by far is Wit's End, because it's relatively cheap and gives you sustain and magic resistance in addition to boosting your DPS. My number 2 offensive item is Trinity Force, simply because it can be definitely built every game if you're ahead. The downside is that it's extremely expensive. And lastly, we have Liandry's Torment, one of my trademark Shen items. Liandry's is not an item you can buy every game, but it's extremely good against specific team comps. If you're facing multiple tanks on the enemy team, the Madness and Torment passives will combine to make Shen deal tons of damage. Straying away from the offensive, I need to emphasize the power of supporting the strong members of your team. The strength of supportive items cannot be understated. My go-to support option is Knight's Vow. Knight's Vow is extremely cheap, provides great stats, and can save your carry's lives in a plethora of situations. If your team's win condition is a fed Aphelios, then buy this and enjoy the free LP. The only other support item worth mentioning here is Locket, which can be bought in later stages of the game to provide team-wide shielding and complement your large health pool. To conclude the item chapter, I want to quickly mention the all-around late-game superstar items, Gargoyle Stoneplate and Warmock's Armor. Stoneplate is the best tank item when it comes to teamfights, and Warmocks can be extremely good once you have bought some resistances and can afford to use gold on pure health. Next up, we have the mechanics section. Alright, so in this section I will showcase Shen's mechanics. Let's start off with the standard EQ combo. So we just use E, then Q while we're mid-air and 3 auto-attacks. Next up we got the extended trade. First we pull the Q through them, wait a second or two, then we taunt in and hit the Q again, that way we get 6 Qs in a row. It's a really powerful trade and you will win lane 100% with this technique. Next up Q flash. Did you see how clean that was? Let's see if you do it a bit too late and what happens to Q flash. You don't get the empowered auto attacks because you flash too late. If you flash too early, you get the empowered auto attacks, but your Q cooldown is longer. If you do it perfectly, the blade almost flashes with us to the new location and we get the empowered auto attacks. For E-flashes, we got a couple of different techniques. Basically, it's all the same. It's easier if you have unlocked camera. You can taunt backwards, flash on top of them, taunt 2 targets, stuff like that. Now, this is basic auto-attack Titanic reset. Fast, but we can do it faster and put E in between. Haha, bet you didn't know that one. Let me describe the game plan you should have when going into a game as Shen. You're playing a strong early game champion that wants to win the lane and slow down your lane opponent's gold income. Trade aggressively in the early game and try to get solo kills with the help of Ignite. Once you gain a lead, translate it into small wins across the map with your ultimate. Get someone on your team ahead as a late game insurance, because Shen does not scale well. After the laning phase, analyze the game state and identify the current objective. The current objective can be Rift Herald, a dragon, an outer tower, or even the Baron. After the identification is complete, you should stay on the opposite side of the map in relation to that objective. This way, your opponents are forced to split their forces, and through smart usage of your ultimate, you should always be able to create a temporary local superiority for your team. As Shen, you want to always snowball your advantage and try to win the game before the enemy top laner eventually outscales you.